Hello, my name is Matt Doble and I'm one of the assistant principals at Preston School. Alongside that role, I oversee our GCSE computer science qualification, and I've seen over the last 10 years how the increasing complexity of a modern GCSE course, along with the massively increased content that makes up most of the GCSE courses, has made revision an absolutely vital tool for every single student to undertake in the run-up to their exams. In this short video, we're going to be looking at how students can revise most effectively and how families can support students in revising at home. One of the most common questions we're asked by students is, do I really need to revise? I've worked hard, I've been to all of my lessons, and I think I know the key content that's going to be in my exam. The answer to that is absolutely yes for every single student. The human brain is designed to forget information over time. We pick up huge amounts of knowledge, data and information each day, and the brain needs to decide which pieces of information does it store, what bits does it commit to our long-term memory, and which pieces of information can be forgotten. That's something called the forgetting curve, and it's the idea that if knowledge isn't accessed repeatedly over an extended period of time, eventually it will be forgotten. The more often we access that knowledge, the longer we can remember it each time. So in a student's lesson, you've probably been taught content the very first time, and you've probably then revisited that maybe a week later, and then maybe a month later after that again. That process is undertaken to help instill that knowledge to your long-term memory, and your revision is the next step in that process. You can see by the graph on the screen how each time we recap content, and that's the green line, the rate at which we forget the information is massively reduced. So that idea of revising over an extended period of time, not cramming the night before the exam, is absolutely vital. There's a huge amount of information you'll have been taught over the last 5 years, and all of that is leading up to your GCSEs. And you can't possibly expect to remember all of that unless you've been through things like past papers, revision guides, creative mind maps to remember that key content. The next key barrier we often face is students saying, well, I just don't have the time. I've got too many other things to do, and I don't have the time to revise every single day. The normal week is made up of 168 hours. For about 45 of those, students should be in school or on their way to school or on their way home. Probably about 63 hours or so of sleep. Most of the research around sleep and adolescence talks around sort of 8 to 10 hours of sleep a day, so we should be aiming for that sort of 8 or 9 range by the time we're looking at our GCSEs. Let's allocate 10 hours to entertainment, watching TV, family time, those sorts of things. Maybe another 7 hours to hobbies, sports over the weekend, training sessions. Most young people are going to want to see their friends, so maybe again we could say an hour a day allocated to that social time. Another hour thinking around eating, cooking. That healthy eating is really important in the run-up to the exams. And hopefully another sort of hour or so a day going to the toilet, showering and those sorts of things. Even if students undertake all of those for the time listed, we have absolutely still got 3 hours a day, every day that we can dedicate to our revision. And that's by undertaking, like I say, the sports, the social time, and not letting any of those things drop over the next sort of 8 months or so in the run-up to your exams. So what do we do with the rest of that time, that 3 hours a day that we've got spare? Well, most students will sit exams in between 6 and 9 subjects on average. We want to plan to revise each subject for 2 hours each per week. We then might pick a couple of subjects where we know we're struggling, where we know we need to do a little bit more work, and we might allocate those an extra hour. In short, we're probably looking at 15 to 20 revision slots per week. Okay, an hour long, and we'll look at exactly how those might be put together and exactly the format those might take in a couple of minutes. Students should then put together a revision timetable, and it's really important to plan in that dedicated time where students will be revising. Now, this might be the sort of starting point that a young person would look at. We know we've got school, we know we need to eat, and we've also then got things like football training, football matches, a cinema, and obviously those are interchangeable. And this is where students should start off. Where have I got my free time? What we then do is put each subject in twice, and again, if we've got any subjects where we're struggling or subjects that we know are really important for our college application, we might put in those twice. You can see there that we've still got those breaks. We've got an hour break between every session. We've still got a good hour in there for eating, plus some time there for those social activities after school. That sort of timetable and that plan is really important. It's important that students then stick to that when they start to think around their revision. It holds us all to account in terms of exactly what am I going to do this hour. The next stage is then making sure that students are revising in the most effective way possible. Not all revision tasks are created equal. The day of sitting in a room with a book, reading it and saying, right, that's my revision, are done. That isn't impactful, it isn't effective in terms of every hour spent revising. There's lots of research into what sorts of activities help commit information to the long-term memory. And we can see in the low effectiveness column, we've got some of the more stereotypical revision activities. Rereading, highlighting, underlining keywords, maybe writing a little summary. All of those are found to be quite low in terms of the impact that they have on students actually remembering content in the long term. If we move to the moderate effectiveness column, we've got things like interleaved practice. That means chunking up and practicing different topics within the same hour session. Asking interrogative questions, asking why and making connections between different pieces of learning. And also self-explanation, so reading a revision guide, writing elements of that down, and then trying to explain it back either to a student self or to one of their family members at home. Where we really want to be aiming is that high effectiveness column. Distributed practice is the idea of revising over an extended period of time, allowing you to revise each topic lots more than one time. Practice testing is also a really important revision technique, using past papers or revision guides or resources from teachers so that students can test themselves. And what we'll do in a minute is combine the high and the moderate effectiveness column together so that students can learn using the moderate column, but then also test themselves using the high effectiveness column. And by doing that, students will get much more from each hour that they revise than if they were, say, just reading a book and highlighting the keywords. So with all of that in mind, what should each hour look like? We've written our plan, we've got a timetable of when we're going to revise. We've also looked at what sorts of activities are going to have an impact and not. Well, first of all, we need to revise the content. And in the first half an hour of each block, students should revise specific topics for a subject. And it's really important they create something when they're doing that revision so that it's not just simple rereading. They might create a mind map, flashcards, they might create questions to test themselves with. And that might take up, like I say, the first half an hour of each hour block. It's then important they do have a quick 5-minute break. Lots of the research says that after about 25 minutes, the brain starts reducing in terms of the amount of information it continues to take in. And then in the second half an hour block, or the remaining 25 minutes or so, students should test themselves on something they've revised previously. And that might be something they revised maybe the week before. That's that idea of distributed practice, coming back to topics over time. So in week 1, we might revise topic A in the first half an hour. We'd then test topic A the following week, having revised maybe topic B. So each week we're staggering what we're going to revise and what we're going to test so that we're not revising and testing on the same day and then moving on forevermore. Students often ask about the right environment for their revision, and this is another really important topic and something families should be able to support with. Students need a clear and comfortable space where they're able to undertake their revision. It's really important that we remove those distractions, be that younger brothers or sisters, but also things like music and a mobile phone. Lots of students say that they revise better to music. Revision with music that has lyrics definitely has a negative impact. If students are revising to music, it needs to be music without lyrics, so normally things like classical music, which they're often slightly less keen on. It's also really important the phone is put away. Checking the phone every 45 seconds is going to detract from the revision, and it's going to make sure that students are remembering more about Snapchat and their text than they are about their biology revision. Certainly placed on Do Not Disturb, preferably left with parents, and this is an area where families can absolutely support. When you know that hour revision period is happening, take the phone away and say you can check it in your 5-minute break. It's also obviously important that we've got those healthy eating habits, we've got that brain food that we're taking in a couple of times a day, and also a good night's sleep. It is very, very hard to revise when students are tired. So we're now going to look at a couple of things that students could create within their first revision half an hour, so that first half hour where they're revising key content. Mind maps are a really good way of organising content and making links between learning. That idea of making links between the things they've learned builds links in the brain, and it makes it much easier to access that information after an extended period of time. Mind map should make use of keywords, colour coding, and then small images or sketches to help trigger memories within the brain. It certainly shouldn't be that students are writing down absolutely everything they know. It needs to be those key terms, those key phrases that then trigger the wider knowledge of the content that students have been working through. There's an example on this slide. There's also lots of examples online of what an effective mind map might look like. Another revision technique is something called Cornell Notes, and this is out of Cornell University, and it's around taking down key elements from things you're being taught without copying down everything word for word. In effect, the page is split into 4 sections. We'd have a title at the top, keywords down the left-hand side, and then notes around each keyword in the right-hand side. At the end of each A4 page, students will have a summary section where they try to summarise in as short a phrase as they can the absolute key content that they've needed to revise from. There's lots of research around this sort of note-taking method, and it talks around how students can write less, remember more, and in a shorter period of time. So again, one that students don't often think around in their GCSEs, but certainly a valuable revision technique. Flashcards are a favourite of mine, a small sort of pocket-sized card that allows students to revise one topic. They create these as part of their revision hours. They also then come back to those and use those time and time again. So it might be they test themselves each morning using the flashcards they made the week before. It might be that they ask family members or siblings to test them using those flashcards, but it's important that they put work into creating them as well. Flashcards are also great because you can build up that bank of resources over time. If you make 10 a week, suddenly in 7 weeks' time you've got 70 flashcards that you can then revise from. It allows again you to come back, and that idea of distributed practice, coming back over an extended period of time to the same content. Nearly every single GCSE subject will also have a revision guide that's available through the school. I really like the CGP guides, and I've purchased those for all of our computer science students. They're helpfully split into 2 books. You've got the blue book, which is for your revision, or that first half an hour, and then a white book, which is a testing or practice book with practice questions in, which is really useful for that second half an hour. Now, these are available for about £4 or £5 from Amazon per book. They're also often available for through the school at a slightly reduced rate. It's worth checking with your teacher which exam board you're on and making sure you're getting the right revision guide for the exam board and the version of the exam that you're currently working through. But again, a really, really valuable revision tool, and something that for quite a small financial cost can provide a massive benefit for students. The entire computer science course is listed in 79 pages in the CGP guide, so they've massively reduced the content, and again they've taken that sort of key pieces of knowledge, those key things that students absolutely must remember. The last one is that high effectiveness piece of revision, which is around past papers and past questions. All students should be aiming to complete past papers in every single subject in the weeks running up to their exams. They are the absolute best way to revise. There is no point starting with these. If you don't know the content, these aren't going to help, but these are going to help transfer that knowledge into your long-term memory. So students should do that revision, but once they are confident, they should be undertaking numerous past papers, and most exam boards have got these available for free on their website. It's also useful for students to mark these. They can then see common misconceptions and easy places where students might drop marks. It's very easy to phrase a question in the wrong way and suddenly lose 50% of the marks you should have got. So that marking is important. The marking and assessing is also something that families can assist with. It's easy for students to give themselves the benefit of the doubt when marking. If families help out, you can be that little bit harsher when it comes to the marking and ensure that students are identifying exactly where any mistakes are being made. I hope that's been a useful oversight into the research around modern revision. That idea of breaking down into a revision timetable, allocating those 15 to 20 hours a week where that independent study is going to happen, looking at what revision techniques have an impact and which don't, and focusing on things like distributed practice, practice testing, but also the creation of resources such as mind maps and flashcards. As a quick final thought, it is never too late to start that revision, but cramming the night before isn't going to work. As I said at the start, the modern GCSEs are made up of so much content that you haven't got any hope of remembering all of that if you revise it the night before. The first step is to absolutely get started, and you should be getting started soon. By January, you should be very actively into your revision, doing a number of hours each week with that timetable up on your bedroom wall and those bank of resources being created, be it mind maps, flashcards, or past papers once you think you understand the key content. Your teachers will always be happy to help with your revision, whether it's marking past papers, advising you on the exam board you're on, or printing off additional past papers. Most past papers are posted to the exam board's website, but they do keep a couple of the more recent ones back that are password protected and only available to teachers. So it's very worth asking your teachers, A, are there more past papers available? And B, can you get those printed off or onto Google Classroom for me? As always, if you do have any questions, please post those either into the comments section below or into Google Classroom. Thank you very much for watching.